Hello everybody, I'm Zenith and welcome back to Elseworlds month of the Disney Debate. The Disney Debate where we talk about Disney products and Disney films, but lately in this Elseworlds month we talk about films that are based on Disney franchises. This is like the alternative universe. This is like the mirror universe. Unfortunately, you do not have any mirror versions of ourselves. It is still just Zenith, Kat, and Eric. How's it going, guys?
I'm confused.
I hate this.
Yeah, this has been a very interesting week for us. Granted, today's episode is not as bad as Mirror Mirror. However, the interesting thing about today's recording is that this is not the first time we've attempted to record this episode.
That's for sure.
Yesterday we sat down and I had been very, very tired, but we attempted to record this episode. But the eclipse happened, and for some reason, my internet on both connections, I have two different routers. Both of those routers did not work. Like, it kept cutting out. We spent 40 minutes on one attempt recording, and like every 10 minutes, the call would just like slowly slow down, and it would become robotic, and you couldn't hear any of the other people. And then we tried for another 40 minutes on a different call. Even with me switching between two routers, it would not work. So I blamed the Fire Nation because this was the day of Black Sun, and they had to do something to stop us from talking about Snow White and the Huntsman. Would you agree with that assessment, Kat?
Oh yeah, definitely. Screw the Fire Nation. Like, dear God, that was an annoyance. But yeah, I definitely blame the eclipse though. Like, seriously, I love how everybody is blaming the eclipse for stuff. People at my job are blaming the eclipse for our printers not working. It is great. But yeah, it's a shame though, because I mean, when we needed the internet most, it vanished, like the Avatar.
Of course, everything changed when Kristen Stewart attacked.
Yeah, then everything became shit.
I guess you could say she really eclipsed our recording.
Boo!
You go to your corner.
I will reach through this microphone and slap you.
Before we start talking about Snow White and the Huntsman, and before I tell you what it is, so Eric, what is your stance on this eclipse nonsense that happened yesterday?
It's just funny to the fact that we were trying to record this while this was going on, but like, I don't know, because I mean, I know like people used to believe that like eclipses like would signify, you know, something like a bad omen, like something was going to happen, something bad was going to happen, or, you know, bring about the end of the world, you know, stuff like that. But I just think it's just kind of funny that this just all seemed to happen while the eclipse was going on. Actually, when we were recording this yesterday, the eclipse was already gone because it like ended at about, I want to say like 4:30 in the afternoon, something like that. Like it finally, you know, was going away. But it's just funny. It's just funny how all this happened.
It's all one strange coincidence, and it probably had something to do with, like, you know, other people in my apartment, or just like just bad luck in general, because sometimes connections just derp, even the best of connections, because this is a streaming router. But it just, sometimes these things happen, and you got to deal with it. And we decided to push it to today, and it's working fine right now. Knock on wood. Knock on wood. All of a sudden, everything ends.
See, kids, this is what happens when you watch the prawns. Don't do it. Don't do it on a shared internet. It fucks over everyone.
With that being said, today we are talking about Snow White and the Huntsman, and Snow White and the Huntsman is an interesting film. Mirror Mirror last time was weird, it was poorly paced, it was just a badly structured film. It never really felt like a film. Like, a lot of times it felt like I was just watching random things happening. This is a film. Like, I can say 100% that this is a film, but This film is like if you took Twilight and Lord of the Rings and a whole bunch of other different ideas like Jupiter Ascending and stuff like that. You put that together into one film. That is Snow White and the Huntsman, only it's not as interesting as a lot of the other films that we've talked about on the show. Like, it's interesting and it's highly riffable. It's like it's one of those so bad it's good films, but it's not super interesting, and we're gonna get into that. But basically, Snow White and the Huntsman is okay. So the studio said, let's take what is popular at the time. We're gonna try to be Lord of the Rings. We're gonna try to be Chronicles of Narnia, which was already trying to be Lord of the Rings. We're gonna take these film ideas and we're gonna apply it to Snow White. We're gonna take the lead of we're gonna take the lead of Twilight, Kristen Stewart, who already was not doing well in her own films, and then we're going to take Chris Hemsworth, who admittedly is a pretty good actor in this film, and we're going to mishmash them together, and then we're going to take Bob Hoskins and a bunch of other people, and we're going to make them dwarves, even though they're not dwarves, and we're going to take this guy called the Duke, and then we're going to mishmash him into one plot, and we're going to call it Snow White and the Huntsman, and it seems like it, on paper, I cannot see this working as a film. And some parts really do work as a film and some parts really don't. But before we get into the story itself, Kat, what are your initial thoughts on this whole weird concept?
Like I said, I'm confused. Like, in a weird sort of, do I really hate it that much? Because, don't get me wrong, it's a bad film. I did not really enjoy this film. I probably enjoyed it a little less than you guys did. But the thing is, like, it didn't make me mad. Like, it didn't make me mad like Mirror Mirror did. There was no moments where I was, like, face-palming myself or, like, growling in agony or anything like that. But at the same time, I just didn't enjoy it. It's like, there are some things I did like, some things that I think they did maybe better than Mirror Mirror, but other stuff they did worse. There was so many ups and downs. I really had a hard time figuring out, where to place this. And I'm like, well, I mean, on the one hand, it's like it's ripping off several movies. On the other hand, at least it's doing it well. On the other hand, and it just keeps going on, and I keep trying to justify this and that, but at the same time I'm like, no. So yeah, I'm confused.
It's one of those films where I think it could have been a good movie if given the right director. This clearly wasn't the right director. It was actually a pretty good script from what I'm seeing. Like, it maybe needed some rewrites, but it needed better actors and it needed a new director. And that's the thing, like, this isn't Mirror Mirror where you got good actors doing a horrible script. This is kind of the opposite, where you have some good actors and a lot of just weird bad actors with a good script and a good idea just directed poorly. But let's get into this, into the story itself. So the film is about Kristen Stewart, who is Snow White, and it does an actually pretty good job in the first few minutes of setting up how Snow White got to be left alone, because you never really got that in the original Disney film. Kristen Stewart, as a kid, was a good princess. Like, everyone seemed to like her, and she had a very good father. She had a relationship with the Duke. Like, they were friends as kids, so they did a good job setting up these characters. And then all of a sudden, this army lured the king into attacking, and it turned out to be like this really kind of phantom army. It was like made out of mirrors. It was interesting because it was something that I hadn't really seen before. Granted, it kind of reminded me a little bit of Maleficent, wouldn't you say, Eric?
Yeah, definitely. Because when they go out and they meet the army, it does kind of remind me of Maleficent. How the army was brought out to to stop the creatures in the forest or whatever, and oddly enough, they go into a forest to fight this this dark army or whatever. And once they defeat them, they find this woman who's been held prisoner in a coach or whatever, and the king takes her along, and that ends up being, and she ends up being the queen. So that's how they introduce the queen. So it's almost like they kind of set up it was kind of a trap to lure the king out to meet up with her, to create this false victory, this dummy army to overthrow, so that way he can rescue her and make her his queen. So I kind of like how that was set up. But what's really interesting about the Wicked Queen, though, is that she's done this before with other kingdoms. Like, she kind of just goes from like kingdom to kingdom, and she kind of like just sucks like all like the essence out of each kingdom and just leaves it to rot, and just, you know, like a succubus, which pretty much what she is. She's a succubus, and she goes, and after that, she like, you know, she takes, and after a while, after she gets married, you know, she quickly betrays the king, and then her real army comes in and takes over, and then locks away Snow White up in the tower for the next 15 or so years, 10 years, something like that.
And here is what I think is the most interesting part of the film. The beginning is actually, I think, really well set up, where you have the queen being a succubus. You have this nice twist where she lures out the king, and she basically sucks out his life essence, and it shows that she feeds off of the life energy around her, which is why all the stuff in the Forgotten Forest, or I forget what they called the forest, but basically like everything in the forest is dying and stuff like that, and that's why like all these evil creatures are lurking around. And they go into it more later on in the film, and it doesn't always make sense, but I think this initial opening actually was pretty good. You don't get too much of the bad acting in the opening, aside from the fact that the queen has this blank expression on her face, which is really weird.
Yeah, I gotta say, I agree with you guys. I do agree the setup to this was much better than in Mirror Mirror, because I mean, it was better than the original story in general. It's just that, you know, the king takes a new wife, doesn't realize how vain she is, dies before he can learn the truth, and then she treats Snow White like shit the rest of her life. Like, it's, you know, your typical fairy tale thing. And then, of course, Mirror Mirror, we don't find out till much, much later, pretty much by the end of the film, that, oh no, she bewitched the king and actually, like, had him hidden away for some odd reason. Yeah, so this one I agree, like, she straight up fucking kills him. Like, I love how she sucks out his life force while they're having sex. She pretty much sucks out his life force through his dick. And I'm like, oh my god, she is a goddamn succubus. Goddamn you, succubus!
And she didn't even have to do that, because later on in the film she shows she can do that just by like picking someone up and like just draining it out like a Dementor. And I'm just like, oh, she just wanted to have sex, didn't she?
Hey, you gotta rub one out somehow.
So you have this really good setup, and aside from a little bit of interesting acting choices from the queen in the beginning, I think this opening setup is actually well done. But the moment things start to change is after her army comes in, you meet her brother, and her brother is like, he has this weird haircut, and it's like almost a bowl cut, but not, and he's just a really weird acting choice. Like, I don't know why they brought this guy in, because the queen overacts a lot, he underacts a lot, and they have like this weird kind of acting joust match until the end. And when we get to characters, we'll talk about one of my favorite moments in the film, which involves his underacting and stuff like that. But like from this moment on, it becomes a battle of, okay, she starts shouting orders at everyone, and she's like, you will do this, you will do this. And he just like, he's mumbling all his lines, and it's if only to watch the overacting of the queen, I think this is amazing, because throughout the film, I could not keep a straight face at this point because she kept barking her orders, and she was just so over the goddamn top. Like, it was ridiculous.
How could she get past my brother?
How dare she get past my brother? You'll do this thing, I will fight her.
It's like, at first I was glad because I'm thinking, okay, here's an actual beautiful evil queen, you know, that fits the part, unlike Julia Roberts. But then she goes into full-on, like, crazy-ass villain mode. Like, seriously, she is, like, super fucking evil in this version. Like, there is no, like, the whole thing, the original queen was driven purely by her vanity, which made her do evil stuff. But in this one, she's, like, seems to be strictly motivated by evil. Like, seriously, the way she just kills people without a thought and all the heinous shit that she does, like, oh my god, I was actually, like, terrified of her at times.
They do a lot of good things with the Queen in this version, and I think despite the acting of the actual, like, actress, I think the character is very, very good. Like, she's evil. Visually, she's made to look more grotesque than everyone else, even if she's beautiful. Like, they do a lot of things with her. Like, they have her kill, like, birds and, like, take out hearts. She takes out a heart of I think it's a pigeon or something, and eats it. And it's, like, those subtle things like that, that, you know, they make her seem beautiful, but everything around her that she does starts to die, and you realize that beauty is gained from death. And I think that's an interesting association, especially because later on in the film, she takes a bunch of crows and makes, like, this crow golem out of them. And when she gets defeated in that crow golem form, like, it shows her, like, you know, all, like, covered in this, like, gloop. It's weird. And then there's a part in the beginning of the film where she bathes in this white bath. Now, I say white. I kept saying, like, it's gotta be milk, right? But it's very, very thick, and it's very, very white. Like, it's not even, like, semen. It's like paint, almost. Like, I don't even know what it is, but it's like, it was probably done for some symbolism.
Or the trailer.
But, like, or for the trailer. Like, it's an interesting visual, and it actually does fit with the film. But it serves to make the Queen beautiful yet hideous at the same time, and I think visually what they do with that is quite interesting. Would you not agree with that, Eric?
Yeah, it is very interesting. Like, visually, it's kind of almost like the symbolism of her. Like, she has to coat herself in this stuff as a way to kind of preserve her beauty, because, I mean, sure, I mean, the only way, well, the main way for her to keep her looks is because she takes the energy, the life essence from other people as a way to keep her looks, because we find out later in the film that she was, like, cursed at this young age, and she has to keep doing this in order to keep up with her appearance. Otherwise, she becomes old and decrepit, and then she finds out from the mirror, and the mirror is a big CGI Dementor thing, and she finds out that there is a key to making her immortal, and it's through Snow White, played by Kristen Stewart. Really? But I digress. So basically, the reason why she has to go after Snow White is because she's the key to her immortality.
Although the mirror does say that that Ferris blood can make her immortal, but by Ferris blood, she can also be destroyed, leading to one of the weakest parts of the film, the Chosen One narrative. They basically turn Snow White into this Chosen One that's destined to kill the Queen. And this is the weakest part, which cribs from, like, you know, Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland and all this other stuff, like Harry Potter. And again, it's an amalgam of different concepts. And so essentially they're trying to turn Snow White into this Chosen One that has to destroy the Queen. And that is the weak part of the film. That is where, like, I start to check out because, first of all, it's Kristen Stewart. Kristen Stewart is not destined to kill anybody, except for maybe the people that she sleeps with. Ayo.
Or in the case of her only expression of dull surprise.
Uh, um,
I'm sorry, I do not buy the fact that she is considered fairer than Charlize Theron. No, that does not fly for me. Like, I can get if, like, they said, she was most pure of heart or something, even though we don't really see her being really, like, kind or anything of the nature. But yeah, for us to expect that, oh yeah, she's more beautiful than her, but she's also going to be the one to destroy her. No, no, I don't buy it. Not in the slightest. This is bullshit. This is total bullshit.
None of this makes sense, and it's not just it's not just like the Chosen One plot. It's not just the fact that Kristen Stewart eventually learns how to wield a sword and fight like in an epic Lord of the Rings Narnia film.
Ugh.
But it's like throughout the film, from when she's a young child, everyone's saying, "Oh, everyone says you're pretty," and then they keep bringing it up, and now she's the fairest in the land. Like there is a point where she stops being just pretty, and the mirror says, "Oh, now she's the fairest one in the land." But at no point, even as a child, did I think she looked exceptional. Like, if that makes sense, like she seemed like a pretty standard normal child, and as an adult, she seems like, it's Kristen Stewart. Like, what do you expect? But I'm just like, they keep playing her up. In every other line of dialogue, they play up this plot point to somewhat foreshadow it or something. And it's just, the crux of this film does not work.
That's just miscasting right there. I remember yesterday before we recorded, we were talking about how Kristen Stewart wasn't exactly the first choice on the list for casting for Snow White. In fact, there was actually a bunch of actresses they had in mind, but they couldn't get a hold of any of them, and many of them would have done better than Kristen Stewart. Same thing with the Huntsman, but I digress. So the fact that it came down to this, it's like whatever.
You couldn't pick anyone other than Kristen Stewart.
Yeah, oh god. Like I said, she's basically Bella from Twilight. There's really no difference. It's like, if you want someone who's gonna passively float around between scenes, not really contribute much, not really say much, but everyone sings her praises, yeah, there you go, that's Bella. That's pretty much what she is. And the thing that I really hate is, like, how, they try to make her, like, into, the chosen one warrior princess type. Like they've tried doing with every strong female character since Lord of the Rings. And it annoys the hell out of me because we do not see her progress. We do not see an arc for her. We do not see anything that earns her the right to have that title. Like for instance, what was it? So yeah, she spends most of her life locked in a prison. She escapes, she runs into the Huntsman, he teaches her this one disarming move, then she spends the rest of the movie basically being shuttled between groups of people who all either die or get injured trying to protect her, until finally she gets her dumbass poisoned, and then awakened later, and then suddenly she's out in full-fledged armor wielding a sword, and we're expected to believe that, yeah, she's gonna take down the Queen. No. That ain't happening.
Yeah, I think the biggest problem is the fact that there is no progression. Like you said, there's no arc. She starts off, and the only thing she does is that she uses a nail to scar the brother of the Queen and escape. That's the only thing she's actually done for, like, the majority of the film. And then after she wakes up from getting poisoned, she goes and she suddenly knows how to use a sword and all this other stuff. And there's no training arc. And you know what? People lambast training arcs in anime, or like, they say, oh, why do we have to sit here watching people train? Um, because it's nice to be able to learn how your characters got better. If we didn't understand that Ichigo, had all this training to get Bankai and all this other stuff, that he just pulled this out of his ass. Like, that's bad storytelling. We should be able to see at least some progression of a character, or at some point in the middle, we should be able to see that, hey, this is how I got from point A to point B, instead of just pulling it out of their ass. And that's the entire arc of Kristen Stewart.
Yeah, I mean, for as much shit as I give Mirror Mirror, at least they showed Snow White learning how to fight. You really saw her training with the dwarves, and granted, she didn't get that good at it, but then again, she only had a short time to learn, X amount of moves. So, that at least made it believable. But here, you don't see anything. I mean, honestly, the whole thing to me is basically a ripoff of Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland, because it's the same exact thing. Alice is the chosen one who's destined to slay the queen's dragon, and they always show you that picture of her in like full-fledged armor wielding a sword as she decapitates it. But we don't see her train for that at all throughout the entire film. And then finally, when we get up to that point where she's willing to fight the dragon, suddenly she's decked out in armor and she knows how to wield the sword. When did that happen? Like, I get this is supposed to be like Wonderland and stuff's not supposed to make sense, but I mean, give us something. Like, just the fact that, oh, she's destined to slay it and so she shall. Like, no, that's not enough. I'm not gonna believe that shit. I mean, show us a goddamn arc. Show us, her learning at least some decent moves. Show us something. Like, I hate it when movies do this.
The film continues from this point as we follow not Snow White, but the Huntsman. Now, in the original Disney film, the Huntsman was a very small part. He tried to kill Snow White, and then he was out. Here, because the movie's titled Snow and the Huntsman, they had a different idea with this. They wanted to make the film where Snow White and the Huntsman work together to defeat the Queen. As an idea, I think this is actually pretty good, because it's different enough from the source material to stand out as an adaptation, but it's not so different that it's off-putting. I could buy that an alternate take on this franchise, on this concept, could involve the Huntsman in some capacity. And it starts off, much like the film, actually pretty well, where we see Chris Hemsworth drunk in a bar, because like he's been pretty much a drunk ever since his wife died, and that makes sense. I believe his character. I think he has a good character, and throughout the film, he has to come to terms with his wife's death, and that seems to be, to me, one of the themes of the film is like the whole death thing, and takes on death as a concept. I mean, for example, the mirror resembles death itself, and like kind of a physical representation of death, like with the robe. And I think what they're trying to do with this from a thematic standpoint is interesting. Him dealing with his wife's death, and he's brought in front of the Queen. He is given a choice either to help the Queen or die, but the Queen also gives him another incentive. She says that she can bring his wife back to life. And this section of the film, Kat, wouldn't you say that this section of the film could have worked in a better film? Because it's actually not that bad.
Yeah, I do think the Huntsman should have had his own film, which he inevitably does, from what I hear about the sequel slash prequel. But I mean, I'll granted he does have a good foundation for a main character in another story. I just don't think this was the story to do it, because Honestly, the Huntsman, like the character in and of itself, is just supposed to be a plot device. You know, the jumpstart to getting Snow White started on her journey. The fact that he's there throughout the entire thing, as I guess quote her protector. I mean, it's like she already has a prince and the dwarves. Do we really need this extra character who, you know, is much better written than all of them, who really has no incentive to be involved in things whatsoever? It just, I don't know. I feel like I get what they were going for, and maybe it could have worked if they had better writers. I just don't think it worked for this film. And it's a shame because poor Chris Hemsworth, he definitely tried. He definitely put in an effort. I just think it was wasted.
I think what they should have done is they should have either A, taken out the Duke, which was the childhood friend, and made them childhood friends. I don't know if that would cancel out the whole dead wife thing, but I mean, like, Chris Hemsworth is very well written as a character, and it seems kind of arbitrary that he's traveling with Snow White. He's pretty much the Gimli of the party, and that's about it. Like, he's there. He has this great character introduction, but there's not much from there, and the Duke seems to be the love interest for the majority of the film until the end, but we'll get to that. The other stupid thing about this is that they have this whole introduction, they have this whole incentive for why he serves the queen, but when he catches Snow White in the forest and he's about to take her, about to kill her, she says not to do it because she doesn't have the power to bring back the dead. And the queen's brother confirms this fact. The queen's brother, who is sworn to his sister, who has this incestuous, like, love thing for his sister. Like, there's no reason for him to betray the queen, but upon, like, when asked a simple question that he could simply lie to, he says, "Oh, my sister has many powers, but she can't bring back the dead, fool." Like, don't you think this is the stupidest thing in the world that he just says that?
Once again, a great villain is undermined by stupid henchmen.
Plus, if you're going to say that, why don't you wait until after you bring Snow White back to the castle and then be like, "Fooled you." It's like, why did you wait until, like, after, like, right in the middle of the woods, like, halfway through getting the job done before you tell him, "Oh, by the way, she can't bring anybody back from the dead." It's like, why would you say that now? Wait until after your side of the bargain is done, and then pull the old switcheroo. It's like,
Seriously, it's villainy 101. Like, seriously, don't skip class. That's how you get your shit fucked up.
Yeah, and this is kind of where the problems of the film start. Like, there were some problems up until this point, but I could deal with them. Like, the overacting, well, dumb, I thought highly enjoyable. But this is where the film kind of just goes downhill. We spend a lot of time with them just going around the forest, and the queen just being like, "Find her." And a lot of the film is them just tracking down Snow White, her going from place to place, the Duke finding out she's alive, place to place. They run into the dwarves an hour into the movie.
Yeah, I seriously didn't think that they were going to be in the movie at all because they weren't mentioned, they weren't foreshadowed, they have absolutely nothing to do with the plot. And then, like, just when I think, okay, so we're going to get a dwarfless movie. Well, that sucks, but I can live with it. And then bam, there they are. It's like, and then they pretty much are useless for the rest of the film.
There's a lot of useless scenes too before the dwarves that could have been cut. Like, they come across a village of people that resist the queen. They're on the water, and the village gets attacked. And we only see the villagers, like, at the end of the film to say, "Oh yeah, they're alive." But it's like, "Oh, we brought this on the villagers." Okay, like, that scene entirely pointless.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it only exists for Chris Hemsworth's character to come to his senses and be like, yeah, I'm not gonna get involved. See ya. Only for them to get attacked and him being like, oh shit, maybe I shouldn't leave them after all. It's like, well, if you're just gonna stay with her anyway, what was the point of you leaving? It's like, it's like we need drama, so let's just make up this scene for the sake of it.
I feel like if you're going to incorporate the dwarves into it, they should have just cut out that scene with the tribe with the women, and eventually they burn the village down like 5 minutes in. Like they should just cut that scene out and just go straight to the dwarves, because that's just filler. There's no point in having it in there. And if you're going to incorporate the dwarves, just have them just go straight to the dwarves, and have like the huntsman has been living with the dwarves or whatever for a while. He's befriended them. Stuff like that. I thought that would be a lot more interesting. But Kat, like you said, like I would have been perfectly fine if the dwarves weren't in it at all. But they waited till like a little over an hour into the film, like halfway through, before they finally decide to show up. It's like, okay, a little late, but like now it's like, because now you have Snow White, then you have the Huntsman, the dwarves, and you have the Duke. Like all these characters in there, none of which get an equal amount of screen time to develop anything, and they're just all crowded in there for no reason. It's just some of it obligated, like with the dwarves, but like other characters with like the Huntsman and the Duke, like they could have just combined the two into one thing, which is actually what I thought was going to happen. Like I thought they were going to do something where like the Huntsman is really the Duke, because if you look at it from the beginning, it kind of set itself up for that. Like the Duke ends up leaving. He's like no, and like he's like no, away, no. It's like getting away from Snow White and whatnot. And I thought, it would be interesting. It'd be an interesting twist, and it would tie everything together. That the Huntsman secretly knew that it was Snow White the whole time, and that's why he swore to protect her and stuff like that. But no. And there, I've just made a better film.
And that's the thing about this film. Like I said, it starts off really, really well, and it sets itself up to do one thing. But for that first hour after like she escapes, not a lot happens, and it stops being Snow White and the Huntsman at the hour mark. And it's like, if you're going to have a film called Snow White and the Huntsman, at least develop the relationship between Snow White and the Huntsman. Take out the dwarves, who don't add anything to the film. They're there just to have more warriors in the fight, and they don't really add anything. Like, you have maybe 2 scenes with the dwarves. They try to give personalities, but I think the biggest failing of the dwarves, if you're going to introduce the dwarves themselves, first of all, at least introduce them. This film does not know how to do introductions, because no one is ever introduced. And that's something I realized at this point. I'm like, do we know any of their names at this point? No, we don't. We don't know anyone's name. We don't know the Huntsman's name. We only know Snow White because they keep talking about her. We don't know the Queen's name. We don't know the brother's name. We don't know the Duke's name. We don't know any of the dwarves' names until they bring up one of them, Gus. But that's because they address them. They don't introduce them. And I turned to Kat while watching the film, and I'm like, do we know any of their names at all?
Like, sure, there's Drunky and Angry and Blandy and Blandy number 2 and that guy.
And Bob Hoskins.
Yeah, pretty much. And Nick Frost.
And I was just like, at least Mirror Mirror had the decency of introducing us to the stupidly named dwarves. But, the dwarves had the personality of their names, so it made sense. Like, it was like the original film. Napoleon was like Napoleon. Grimm, that made sense. It was dumb. Very dumb. But at least it was something.
Yeah. And while we're on the subject of the dwarves, we should probably address the mini elephants in the room.
Yes.
So, yes. So for this movie, rather than getting some legitimate dwarf actors, they decided to get regular size actors but superimpose their face onto already established dwarf actors.
Poorly, I might add.
Yeah. Like that you heard me there, right? They had dwarf actors but they put other people's faces on top of them. Like that is really really low. That is fucking insulting right there. I I mean, I know they sort of did it in Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, but at least they used the actors themselves as the little people, even though they themselves were not little people. They somehow made it work with costumes, makeup, and and camera effects. But here, it looks so bad, and it just makes no sense. Like there are little people actors out there, good ones at that. We saw them in Mirror Mirror, and they were the best part. Why couldn't you do it for this movie? Why did you have to go that extra mile to be absolutely insulting to that group of people? I mean, it was so bad that the little people of America actually protested this film, as they rightfully should. Because seriously, like I'm not a little person myself, despite my short height, but yeah, I would be pretty damn mad if I saw that. Like if I saw someone that I could have easily played, but they just put their face, like they just put like a paper mask on top of them. That's basically the equivalent of what they did.
It's infuriating on a few different levels. Like, it's insulting. There's better actors like Peter Dinklage or any of the other people that we saw in Mirror Mirror. But even more so, like, it's completely obvious, and it makes the film look very, very bad, because the thing is, a lot of them, their expressions never change. Bob Hoskins, who's supposed to be this blind guy, his facial expression never changes aside from him talking. That's it. He has this dopey, like, mouth open expression the entire time, and why?
That kind of what adds to the insult as well is that they did get some legitimate actors, but they're given nothing to do. And it's not like they can really do much considering they're not physically there acting, but it makes the whole thing even more baffling. And I, honest to God, feel bad for the actors who had to deal with that, had to somehow make the performance work, even though, let's face it, how could they between the bad writing and the crappy effects? It couldn't be done.
Eric, what is your thoughts upon this whole debacle?
It's just confusing because because we've seen other films do this. Like, at least with, like you said, at least with Mirror Mirror, they got like actual dwarf actors, like legit dwarf actors to play the dwarves. But when you don't have that as an option, like say in Lord of the Rings when they had to do hobbits and they had to do dwarves, they worked around it. Like a lot of the times, most of the shots that you see with like the hobbits or the dwarves, they're usually like close. They're usually close-ups as to hide the fact that they're little, and they only use it more for the wide shots. They could have done something like that here, but they just chose not to, which is odd. I mean, yeah, I can understand with with Snow White and the Huntsman how there are some shots they needed to have somebody stand in, and that's fine. But any other time they could have just had done the same stuff. They could have just done the same camera tricks as they did with the Lord of the Rings films and in the Hobbit films. Like they could have done something like that, but they didn't. And I'm just and it's confusing that they went this route, especially when there are better techniques to do it in.
Not to mention the fact that the dwarves are in the movie for such a short amount of time. It just seems like extra effort for no reason. Like, other than the fact just to be insulting.
The only thing that, the only reason that I can think of them to have, even have the dwarves in the film is for the Lord of the Rings shot, because a lot of this film seems like they're trying to recreate the Lord of the Rings with them, going from one place to the other, and they have these, kind of mountainside shots, which are admittedly not bad of them walking, but I'm like, Lord of the Rings is more than just walking. Like, there's an entire plot. You know, you've got some of it, but, like, there's an entire lore of the world of Lord of the Rings. I don't feel like there's any lore to this world. And it's just, But after they get the dwarves is probably one of the better parts of the film. Not because it's good, but here's the thing. The brother of the queen finds them, tracks them down, gets in a fight with the Huntsmen, and we have this battle, which is really, really weird but fun. And the brother has this, like, throughout the entire film, the brother is underacting, like I said, like, completely underacting. They give him a scar to make him stand out, but I forgot he even had the scar near the end of the film. But what really sets him out is he has his overacting moment. And if you've seen Man of Steel, this tops the I will find him moment. Oh my god, like, he goes, I will find you! he goes full lemon grab. Like, oh my god, like, it is glorious. It is, like, legitimately, I would suggest watching this film just for that overacting moment and the overacting of the queen. Even though a little bit of the middle is kind of bland, that one moment, I'm like, oh my god, this was worth it. This was worth it.
1,000,000 years dungeon!
And then the huntsman impales him through a tree.
And so yeah, that his crowning moment is him saying, I will find you, and then dies.
It's like he finally learned to act, and then he dies.
And I'm like, if the entire film was just him and his sister overacting, I would have been fine, because at least the film would embrace the dumb portions of its nature, because the overacting made a lot of it enjoyable. And it's like, it's kind of weird, because a lot of this film does indeed work, like we stated, but a lot of this film is boring or is infuriating. And then you get to these parts, and I'm just like, if the film had just decided, okay, I'm not going to take myself seriously, I felt it would have been better, because clearly there were two people vying for something here. I don't know if it was the director or the writing team or the actors that were involved in the funny parts of this film. I don't know who was involved in making the actual good premise and the startup of this film. And it's like, it conflicts, because when we first started the film, I'm like, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. And then as the film goes on, I was just starting to be like, okay, yeah, it is kind of bad. And then we get to these overacting moments, and I'm like, you know what? This is amazing. It's a weird mishmash.
Yeah, it's like the talented people were fighting among the dumbass people between who got to write which part, and they all drew straws, and they some teams won more than others, and then yeah, we just got this uneven mishmash of good and bad. It's just, ugh, it's such a shame.
From this point, though, there's actually another legitimately great part of the film. In the best twist, probably the only good twist of the film. But like, we see a scene where Snow White and the Duke are together, and the Duke has caught up with them during the battle with the brother, and so they're catching up, and they have this really, really good scene. They're talking. They seem to have, they have Twilight chemistry. Like, it definitely feels like they were going for an Edward vibe with the Duke. But I'm just like, whatever. It gets to an even better point, though, when the Duke suddenly morphs into the Queen, and it turns out that the Queen has poisoned Snow White, because during the scene, he gives Snow White an apple. And originally, I thought that was just them being, like, a subtle nod to Twilight, like, haha, we did a Twilight-esque scene, I'm giving you an apple, and she takes a bite. But no, it's the queen in disguise. And I'm like, oh my god, that's a clever reveal, because we didn't see the Duke going to bed. We just saw, Snow White walking around, and the Duke goes over to see her. And later, the Duke randomly appears because he was sleeping. And I'm just like, the way it's shot and the way it's paced is so well done that I'm like, this does not belong in this film.
Yeah, I gotta admit, I really did like that part, because you legit don't see it coming, and they even foreshadow it in the very beginning when they're kids. So, yeah, that, like, kudos to them on actually doing that right. Like, that, it's like, see, mirror, mirror, that's how you incorporate an Apple scene. Don't just tack it on at the last fucking second. Ugh. But anyway, yeah, I definitely enjoyed that a lot. So, I should mention, like, since you were, like, comparing him to Edward, I actually think that the prince is more like Jacob, because, he seems like, because he's been chasing after her the whole film. He seems to genuinely care about her and is risking everything for her. Meanwhile, the huntsman kind of looks at her in disdain and doesn't really let on that he likes her at all until the last minute. So if anything, like, he's like Edward. That's what I kind of, like, feel the dynamic is between those three.
So what you're saying is it's Twilight.
Well, yeah, we established that. But then we had to undo that good twist with something predictable and dumb. So, yeah, any of y'all seen Enchanted? Remember how she had the biting of the apple scene, and she falls asleep, and they're like, oh yeah, true love's kiss will waken her, and even though she's been pining for the prince the whole movie, she ends up falling in love with the other guy, and big surprise, it's the other guy that ends up waking her up. Yeah, that's what happens in this movie. It's not the Duke, who she's known since childhood, that wakens her from her slumber. No, it's the Huntsman that wakens her from her slumber. Even though we have not seen a single romantic moment between the two, they've had no chemistry, and he's even admitted to outright hating her at times. So like I said, this is fucking Twilight. This is some bullshit right here.
And this comes to the surprise of no one.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're trying to say is this is Twilight. No, I'm just like, if you enjoyed Twilight, more power to you. I personally don't, but I've seen all but the final film in theaters. Why? Because my friends had a tradition. We would sit and watch the movies in theaters, we would get drunk, and we would riff it because it was so hilariously bad. This is kind of like that, only it kind of misses some of the hilariously bad points. And it's just like, this whole twist of her waking up, like, the dude and whatever, like, it feels a little bit like they were trying to pull, like, a Frozen or Enchanted or God forbid, a Maleficent. But, like, okay, instead of the one you think is going to break the spell, we're going to switch it up. But the thing is, it doesn't work, and it's like, if you're going to set up Chris Hemsworth with this amazing character and this amazing backstory that actually would work with this twist of him finding someone he actually does care for, you know what you do? You don't cast Kristen fucking Stewart as Snow White. Because if it was anyone else in this role, I could see it working, because slowly bringing him out of his shell, like this cold-hearted, removed from the world drunk dude. Which, by the way, we only see him drunk in the beginning of the film. Never ever does he never once throughout the rest of the film does he have like a hip flask or anything where he starts drinking. So they abandoned that, and like if they had kept him being this drunk that removes himself from the world, but his heart is melted by this pure woman who just wants him to see the world for what it is. I could see the Huntsman falling in love, but this kiss breaking the spell makes no sense. And guess what? It amounts to nothing, because she doesn't even know that he woke her up. She doesn't know because he walks away before it even takes effect. So that scene is
entirely pointless.
Exactly. Like, they could have gotten anyone else to do it, and it wouldn't have made sense. And even after the climactic battle and all this other stuff, like, her waking up does not matter at all to him, to his character, and that's not how storytelling works.
Like, dear God, why is that scene so hard to do? Like, she falls asleep. She's woken up by her true love. That's it. Well, why do they have to make it complicated and not make sense and all this other stupid bullshit? Ugh.
Especially when it didn't need to be complicated.
I mean, and in that case, I'm kind of glad they didn't have that scene in Mirror Mirror, because it wouldn't have made sense. And even the movie acknowledged that it wouldn't make sense. So, again, kudos to Mirror Mirror for knowing what to chop out, although I wish they chopped a lot more out, but that's besides the point.
The scene is not hard. The scene works if you establish stuff beforehand. You have to do a good job of building up your character arc from the very beginning and follow through. Follow through.
Please. For once.
Um,
Yeah, let's get to the climax. Because that's when we go full on Lord of the Rings right there.
If you want to call it a climax.
They have this big final battle, and they set it up like it's supposed to be this big, big, big final battle. But instead, it's the dwarves sneaking into the castle, them storming the castle. We don't actually see much of this battle, but then we cut to Snow White, who's infiltrating the actual castle, and we have her in full armor and a sword, taking on the queen.
And she sucks at it. As predicted, because they didn't show her learning how to fucking fight.
At that point, I was actually rooting for the Wicked Queen to win, because not just because I don't like Kristen Stewart, but because the fact that her character is just so poorly written and just poorly acted. I'm just like, yes, good, kill her now, get this over with.
You know what I'm surprised that they didn't do, because it seemed like they were building up toward it? Considering that they were doing the whole Chosen One narrative, usually when they do that, it's because a character either A, has a special power unique to them, or B, has the power within but needs to go through a journey in order to develop it. Obviously, the second thing didn't happen. But the first one, I thought there was setup for it, and it was the fact that she apparently can communicate with animals, which is something that Snow White has been known to do. Because we see throughout the film that she's been able to communicate with birds and horses and deer and even creatures like trolls and stuff. So I'm thinking, okay, so maybe they're going to have scenes where she talks to the animals of the forest, she convinces them to fight by her side. Because, we see the queen who's mutilating these animals and using them for her beauty regimen, so it makes sense that they would want to take her down. They had a setup for this. But it doesn't happen at all. After they get out of the forest, that's it. It's just her in her armor and sword, just haphazardly trying to swing a sword at the queen, who we established by now is friggin' immortal. And she has, so many fucking powers. It's amazing she didn't just obliterate her on the spot as soon as she walked through the door. So, yeah, that was another thing I found massively disappointing about this film. Because she could have been like Snow White from Shrek the Third, where she comes up, she's singing, she looks all dainty and pretty and stuff, and then she goes full on Wicked Witch and is summoning her bird army onto the guards and attacking them, and then you hear Iron Maiden in the background. That's what they should have done. That would have been awesome.
I now have this image of Snow White riding a bear because of that.
That would have been cool. Why couldn't they do that?
Way more epic.
Mm-hmm. Or riding a troll. That would have been cool too. Ugh.
They mixed up their movies. They had Maleficent be Snow White, and they had Snow White be Maleficent.
Ugh. God damn it.
And it's weird too, because in the beginning of the film, she does talk to this bird, and that part I can understand. But when she escapes the castle, the horse is randomly there. The horse is just randomly there. Now, maybe she uses the bird to communicate with the horses, but the horses have never met her, aside from, like, the one point where she was outside the castle. But it's been years. No horse is going to live that long. Like, what do they have, the legend of Snow White and Horsedom or something like that? It's like, when I was a young foal, there was this kid known as Snow White. She was good. She gave me an apple. So I want you to wait in this spot for her to come. Like, it's so weird to have this random horse here. And then the troll scene was, like, right the fuck out of nowhere because the huntsman is being attacked by a troll. And the troll kind of looks like this evil ent thing. And randomly, she steps in front of him, and she's just like, no. And the troll stops. What?
Yeah, it's
I don't
thought
know.
it was leading towards something, but no, it just looks at her, decides she's pretty, I guess, and just walks away. And we never find out why.
We never see it again. So this climactic battle, this showdown between Snow White and the Queen, ends up being a bunch of other people coming in, so the Queen attacks them instead, and then the Huntsman comes in, and through, like, a bunch of stuff happening, the Queen is about to kill Snow White, and she uses that disarming technique to kill the Queen, and because she's the chosen one, it works, even though she was stabbed in the abdomen before and it did nothing by somebody else. It's just, end, movie end. The thing is, inside this film, underneath all the bullshit, there's a very good film in here, and there's legitimately a lot of good scenes that I'm just like, I could see this being a legitimately great film. There's other scenes where I'm just like, if they had gone full parody or whatever, or if they had gone full so bad it's amazing, this could still be amazingly worth your time. But the thing is, these two portions of the film are not the entirety. That's that third section that's the mishmash of so many other different films that it doesn't know what it wants to be. And it's like, okay, if it had chosen one of the three paths, it would have been great. The third path of being horrible, well, I could have just wrote off this film as being horrible, but I can't now. And I think what the worst thing is, like, it's bad being a bad film. It's bad being a boring film, and I think that's really bad. But I think what's worse is having a film have this much potential and seeing it throughout most of the film only to have the bad parts bog it down. And I'm just like, I would still recommend watching a majority of this film because it was much more enjoyable than Mirror Mirror, but I am so disappointed because this film has so much going behind it, behind the scenes. It has so much in a lot of these scenes in general, and it's squandered throughout like a third of the film.
It seems like it's one of those movies that went through pre-production and production hell just to get this thing made. So I mean, with the casting choice of Kristen Stewart is a perfect example of it. And it's a shame. Like, sometimes this happens with certain films that have like otherwise decent scripts, but then something happens, like they miscast somebody, or the director isn't up to snuff. It's heartbreaking sometimes, because otherwise the film probably would have been decent.
Yeah, because they started writing the script in 2003, and the movie didn't come out to 2012, so that should tell you, that definitely must have changed hands a lot along the way. But it's like I could freaking take elements out of this film and make a much better film. Like, did nobody look at this at any point and think, this is a little too silly, or this could be done a lot better, or maybe we should have went with a better actress. It's like,
to be fair, I was gonna say, to be fair though, movie scripts do get shelved by studios for years and years on end. In fact, the original script to Pirates of the Caribbean, to the first one, was written back in '94. Was written back in 1994, and Disney just shelved it for about 8 or 9 years or so. And then in the early 2000s, and I think it was in 2001 or 2002, when they pulled out the script from their library of already submitted scripts, they went, "Oh, let's do that. Oh, let's do this now." And they're like, "Okay." And the writers were still around, like, "Okay, I'm glad you finally decided to do that." But that of course ended up being a better film. Here, it seems more like not just so much the scripts, but so much all the other stuff that went along that kind of bogged it down.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because I don't know if you ever seen The Critic, but they mention this same thing where studios will take good ideas and they will shelve them. Sometimes to just keep them for later to bring them out in case they need a hit film like immediately. Or they'll be like, no, that's too good, and they'll put it away for a few years and bring it out later, or they'll change it. And it's like, studios do this a lot, and it's very weird because a lot of these films are pretty good. And it's like, you have films like, I think what Avatar took like friggin' forever to make, and it wasn't really worth it. But like Pirates was worth it, and it didn't take as much CG, I want to say. And in fact, Pirates was the one that was it Katzenberg or like whoever was in charge at the time liked the least. I forget who was in charge of Disney at that point in time, but like basically the person in charge says, I don't like this Pirates film, but make the Haunted Mansion and make this and make the Sorcerer's Apprentice, and then we'll get back to that. You know, it's just like, but Pirates ended up being the better film. It's weird.
So, I think we've thoroughly analyzed this movie enough. Like, thinking back on it, I'm starting to get a little pissed off now, more than I was before. Not
You
as
sound
pissed,
like it.
not as pissed off as I was with Mirror Mirror, but still pissed off enough where I think they could have done better.
It's a shame. I mean, I don't have much more to say. My final thoughts are, I see 3 different films here. I see a film that is legitimately good, like a Snow White, Lord of the Rings, that could have been done better. I see a film that could have been so bad it's amazing, with them just saying, this is a stupid script, let's roll with it and have everyone overact. And I see a boring, bland piece of crap, also known as Twilight, in here as well. And 2 of these 3 things needed to go. So, final thoughts. This had so much potential. It was squandered. Eric, what are your final thoughts on this film?
The movie needed to have better focus as far as the script goes, like, because it did seem like all over the place, and they were trying to make it up for it. It was trying to be style over substance, but even in style, it was like meh. It was just kind of mediocre, and also there was quite a bit of CGI in there, which kind of just took it out of it, because it's like, yeah, that's CGI. So, like you said, there are some good stuff in there, but the problem is it's bogged down in a bunch of crappy stuff. And if the script needed to be retweaked a couple of scenes here and there, but it's just meh. And I hate it when a movie is just meh, because you can't really feel one way or the other about it.
Ditto to that. And since it's my turn, yeah, I still don't consider this a good film. Like, despite some of its good points and despite some of the potential, I still would not watch this film again. Like, I won't make a sacred blood oath or anything that to never watch it again like I did with Mirror Mirror, but it's definitely not something I would go out of my way to watch again. It just it's just, like I said, it's like you take a bunch of scenes from several different movies and cobble them together into what could have been a coherent plot but wasn't. It's disappointing. Like, well, I'd say it's disappointing, but I didn't really have any hopes going in to begin with. I guess, it's just there. It's like you said, Eric, it's just meh. So there it is, my opinion. Bleh.
All right. Well, Snow White and the Huntsman, I still think it's worth a riff. I think it's worth it for at least a couple scenes. And if you go into it like this, the beginning I think is actually really interesting. But yeah, there was a lot more that they could have done with this film. With that being said, next time we're going to be touching upon the sequel slash prequel that started Elseworlds month, Huntsman: Winter's War. And this is all about the Snow Queen and other stuff going on. It's weird because I saw the trailer and I'm like, wait, they made another one of these things? I thought it was Dead in the Water, and it should have been, but I guess there was enough public interest for a prequel or whatever. I have no idea. I'm gonna have to look into this. But yeah, next time is Huntsman: Winter's War. The films seem to be slowly getting better. Let's hope that this is better than Snow White and the Huntsman a little bit. Maybe they learned their lesson.
I'm not betting any money on it, but I guess we'll see. I mean, at least Kristen Stewart's not in it. That's a plus. So, so already has that in its favor. So I guess we'll see where this goes.
With all that being said, this has been the Disney debate. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and continue the discussion in the comments thread. What are your thoughts and feelings about this movie? Let us know either in the comments or on the Disney Debate fan page at facebook.com/The Disney Debate. We have our own Facebook group to talk about, Disney things, and it's a lot of fun. Come check us out. It's a lot of fun talking to you guys and seeing what you think of the films that we discuss on this podcast. Also, you can check us out. I'm on Twitter at Zenith Will Rule. Kat Mac is sometimes on Twitter, but she's primarily on Facebook at Kat McBerry. And Eric, I believe you have both, but you're primarily on Facebook as well.
Yes.
Yeah, so you can find Eric Stoller on Facebook as well. I do have my own Facebook page. Just look up Zenith Will Rule on Twitter, and you will find my fan page where I update all the things that I do in addition to the Disney debate, because I do a lot of things. Any case, I am Zenith Will Rule.
I'm Kat McBerry.
I'm Eric Y2 Stoller.
And we will see you guys next time for hopefully a slightly better film.
Here's hoping. Until
Maybe not.
TTFN, ta-ta for now. My brother!
And just remember, if you're going to have overacting in your film, at least go over the top of the rest of it. I will find you!
My brother!
Thank you all for watching Zenith Will Review. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more awesome videos. And if you like what you see, check out the Patreon page at patreon.com/Zenith Will Review. See you all next time on Zenith Will Review. This is all the Fire Nation's fault, and we're going to get into this in the actual episode, but I want the bloopers to reflect that, damn it. The Fire Nation sabotaged this podcast. We need to get General Iroh. We need to get Ozai. We need to get Zuko in one room together, and we need to take them down.
They're going down, man. They're going down.
And then we're going to get Rufio.
Isn't he the same person?